So the air is human. The air again, also human.
Yeah, just keep doing it.
To have a great idea, and then air really big.
Yeah.
Also human.
Yeah, and I think that...
But to learn that you're on a journey is divine.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, that's exactly right. When that becomes a revelation, I'm on a journey.
Welcome to the Grounded Presence Podcast, a place for exploring authentic identity, deep community, and an ever-evolving spiritual journey. This week I'm concluding the short series that I've been doing on the work that is yours to do in the world. And if you've missed the podcast before this has just been a series of interviews where I've talked to people that are doing really interesting and meaningful work that has a deep impact on the world around them. And today I'm having a conversation with my good friend, Brian Bishop. And it's just a short, fun, and light conversation to close out this series. And today we kick around the topic of failure. And we do this in a few different forms. We'll talk about finding yourself in the wrong vocations. And we also talk about this experience that I think is fairly universal of having these big ideas that you think will have grand implications. But once you finally have the opportunity to start working on them or implement them, they just completely and utterly fail. And aren't those some fun experiences? But I think we can all relate. And we also talk a bit about the positive relationship between making mistakes and experiential learning, and how having an idea, trying it, and making the mistake is the only real way to truly learn anything. And Brian is a perfect guy to have this conversation with. I've known him for a very long time, and he dreams big all the time, every time. And I've seen him try a number of different big ideas with varying degrees of success. And at one point in the episode, he says that it's only now, after being in the workforce for 30 years, that he's finally satisfied and having fun with what he does. And, I hope that we can all be so lucky to say that someday. Now, I recorded this episode while my family was around the house, so at a few points you can hear my cute little daughter rattling the doorknob of the room we're in, trying to get in on the conversation, and she's great, super cute, so I think you'll get a kick out of it. But without any further ado, let's get right into this conversation, which is really just an ode to trying, failing, experiential learning. So here you go. Enjoy. All right. So I'm here with Brian Bishop.
Woo!
And how long have we known each other?
I think we met in 2001. It's 2018 now, so 17 years. Yeah, you were like 11 years old or something. Are you 27 or 28?
I'm 30.
You're lying.
I'm 30.
No
I just turned 30. Yep.
All right. Well, so maybe we've known each other longer than I thought.
I might have to verify that with Amy. She keeps track of that stuff.
All right. Fair enough. Golly, I'm freaking out.
So what's exactly your title these days?
I am a senior performance solutions designer for Staples. And what that means is I take a look at the way people do their jobs, and I take a look at a lot of data about the way they do their jobs. And if there are places where they can improve, then I come up with a solution to help them improve. So it might be as simple as making a video that gives them some information to do the job better. Or, I might build a training program that helps them out, whatever it is. And it's a lot of fun to look at the data and then come up with solutions for that. It's pretty cool.
I know when we were talking about this podcast, I knew your title was something with training and whatnot, right? And then we had a phone conversation. And I think a day or so later, I was at my job, and they put out a training video, right? That was just total BS, right?
Oh, no, yeah. It's
anyways, so I'm watching this training video. I'm like, I don't even need this. Like, I've already seen it once. They make you do it annually.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I get out the phone. I'm like, all right, what can I do with my phone while I'm doing this?
Yeah.
But then, I hadn't done a training video in a while. They've gotten smarter. So I just try to keep clicking the next.
Right.
I thought I was set up for that, but no, it like made you click other places.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, Brian. Brian's the guy that's doing this stuff to make it so I have to watch this video.
Well, and you're exactly right. That's what we would have resorted to back in the olden days. Now I try to fit into the way you work. I try to, make it super seamless so you don't even know you're learning new stuff.
Okay, so that's an outdated modality.
That's
you're
a totally outdated modality. Yes. I want you to be, you're like, Brian, wait a minute, you made that? I didn't even notice that I took it. It worked out perfectly.
I didn't even know I got trained.
Exactly. That's what I'm shooting for. It works out nicely.
So you've been educated in this training. Say that for me again.
Yeah, performance solutions designer. I even have my Ph.D. in training and performance improvement. But the thing is, it's taken me a long time to get there and to get a good job in it. I've made ridiculous decisions along the way. I've done, it's only now, after being in the workforce 30 years, that I'm satisfied and having fun with what I do. Because prior to this, work just seemed like drudgery and nobody would ever move as fast as I wanted to move.
Cool. That's awesome you're finding your space there.
Well, check this out. So, I don't know if I told you this before, but I was working, I got a job at Corporate Express 11 years ago. And after 9 days on the job, I got fired.
Oh, no.
For being insubordinate. So we had these consultants, and I didn't believe in what they were doing. I didn't think it was going to work. And so I kept telling them, that's not going to work. It's going to be terrible. And they got so fed up with me after 9 days that they fired me. Well,
that's quick.
That was quick. But, they didn't want me dragging them down all over the place. So 11 years later, I get hired by Staples in the exact same building because Staples had bought Corporate Express. And my boss that I have now is a guy that was on my team at the time.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. And so he didn't know that it was me. He still doesn't know. He may have an inkling that it was me that got fired. But at this one point, we're walking around the building and he goes, man, when I first started here, this guy got fired in the first week because he kept telling these consultants that their training program sucked. Well, 6 months later, everybody found out that the training program sucked and that he was totally right, and the consultants got fired. I'm like, pure vindication. But, along the lines of this topic, I felt that getting fired for insubordination was a giant mistake. Turns out it wasn't. It wasn't as big a mistake as I thought, because it allowed me to go to London and live in London for 3 months after that.
Fantastic.
So it's just one of the many mistakes I've made.
So I'm calling you Brian Bishop. Is it Dr. Brian or is it Dr. Bishop? What do you prefer here?
Yeah, man. Nobody calls me doctor. I don't think. Maybe Tammy does once every 5 years, but it's always just Brian. I like the Ph.D. after my name because I didn't do it to get a new career. I didn't do it to impress anybody. It's just stuff that I wanted to learn, and it worked out perfectly.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we're just going to be talking about experiential learning and mistakes today.
No, okay.
Sounds like you're the guy to talk to about all this stuff.
Oh, yeah, man.
But before we get started, I wanted to share a brief story with you.
Please.
And goes along great with your story about getting fired and just somebody pushed the wrong training program out the door.
Yeah.
So I lived in Denver for 23 years and I've never gotten a state parks pass.
Right.
But this past year, I got a pass. And I guess also this past year, they changed the way that they issue the passes. I think before they just kind of wrote it out by hand.
Okay.
Wrote the date out.
Right.
January 5th.
Seems kind of manual, but all right.
The expiration date. So this year they changed.
So wait, they do this when you drive up to the booth and you say, "I'd like to buy a parks pass."
Yeah,
and
the annual,
write on the
annual
back
parks pass.
Okay.
I know the daily ones are definitely. I think they're probably still handwritten out.
Okay.
But the annual ones,
all right,
they were still handwritten out. This expires, in a year from now.
Okay.
They just write the date next year. But so, anyways, this year they changed the way that they did the parks passes, and.
Hi, Sierra.
They changed the way that they did the parks passes, and they started doing them digitally printed. So it's like,
Right.
I think it's heat transfer paper that they're using, right?
That seems
so
pretty
it seems
old
like
school.
it seems like a great idea, right?
Yeah.
Well,
mean,
I think
seems
it's
like it
also
would
on
make
the
it faster.
on the same machine that they're using to print the fishing license.
Oh, okay. All right.
So makes
So
sense.
yeah, we
They
have the
already got
machine. We might as well do it. Yeah.
Let's just add some new stock to it and print parks passes. But within 2 weeks of getting this parks pass, have you ever left a receipt in your glove box for like 2 or 3 weeks in
Kind
the middle
of
of summer?
burns, and you can't read it
Yeah.
anymore. Like
Yeah.
black goes to red, and then red goes to pink, and pink just disappears altogether.
So a really similar thing happened to this.
No way.
This parks pass that's stuck in my windshield. I'll show you on the way downstairs. But it's completely faded, right?
Really?
So you can't see any of the writing. You can't see the expiration date.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's legible at all anymore. Like not even the faintest.
Man.
All you can see is like the State Parks Pass logo for Colorado.
Okay. All right.
Right?
So wait, is it good for a year from the day that you bought it? So
Yes.
if you bought it on June
is.
6th, then it would go to June
Right.
6th next year. Oh man.
So, anyways, I see this Parks Pass getting all faded. I'm like, crap, I'm gonna have to update this every 2 weeks.
Oh man.
So we go into Chatfield State Park a month ago.
Yeah.
And I hold up the line. I'm trying to flag the guy down to see if I can get like a new one printed. Right. So eventually he goes over to like the line that all the annual Parks Pass holders go through.
Yep.
And we're like, hey, so I got this faded Parks Pass. Do I need to get a new one? And he's like, oh no, we started doing that in January. So you're good until January 2019. Because now they know that like all the faded ass Parks Passes.
Yeah.
They can just wave them on through. 'Cause
Makes perfect sense, but boy, causes confusion and stress for people like you.
on that note, I got this idea of how many times have I had ideas and how many times have I seen ideas like that get implemented.
Yeah.
Where, somebody comes charging through and they're like, this is going to be the idea to fix everything.
Yeah.
Right? And they're just gung-ho and they're like so pumped off it. And then it's terrible.
Right.
And it costs the company like tons of money, right? And like not only are they where they started before, but they have to like spend money to undo the system that they just implemented, right?
Totally.
So that was kind of the spirit that I had coming to this episode. Is like,
Oh, sure.
how many times, have you, as a highly educated individual, come into ideas that you thought were great and you thought they were going to solve everything, but long
just
run
faded, huh?
terrible ideas, right?
Well, yeah, before we go on, I expect that the park people now will put testing into place, and let's put this technology that we think is going to work, let's put it in somebody's window for the next 6 months and test it and see if it's going to hold up. But they're learning a very valuable lesson out of that. And so that's the experiential learning that you're talking about.
I'm picturing a room with like 8-10 people in it. They're pitching this idea and everybody's like, oh, that sounds like a great idea.
Totally right.
And then it starts fading. They bring the same 10 people back to the room. They're like, guys, this faded. 8 out of the 10 people are like,
oh, yeah.
I remember that receipt that I couldn't use for that return that I left in my glove box.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know how. I expect that parks people aren't really trained to think about all the risks that could happen with administrative stuff like this. But now they know to do that, right? Well, the one thing that immediately comes to mind when you're asking about this is, and this happened right around the time that we first met, mountain boarding. You know that I started Mountain Boarding Magazine back in 2000. And I did that because I thought mountain boarding is going to be the next big action sport. It's going to be in the X Games. It combines the action of skateboarding with the action of mountain biking and BMX and snowboarding and everything else. Motocross. I mean, it's like the perfect sport as far as I'm concerned. And if I capitalize on this by having a magazine dedicated to this sport, within 2 or 3 years, I'm going to sell this magazine to a much larger publication company. I'm going to be rich beyond my wildest dreams, and I'm going to get to go traveling. So I quit my job, put all the money that I had into this magazine. And long story short, 3 years later, mountain boarding had not taken off. Didn't look like it was ever going to take off. And I just pretty much thrown that money down a rat hole. Now, the beautiful side of that is that I now know how to write a much better business plan and to understand market trends a little bit better. I've done a little bit more research into that. But also, all the skills that I picked up putting together a magazine, so desktop publishing and photography and all that stuff, it applies today to the job that I do. I use those skills every single day. And these are skills that I would not have had I not started this magazine. I really wish it had taken off. I loved it. I loved every minute of that particular job. But there are a lot of factors that came into that, a lot of variables. Other people weren't advertising, or, the ESPN folks would not listen to our plea to be on the X Games. Whatever it might be, basically sunk the sport, unfortunately. I lost a lot of money, but I learned a lot of things, and it really has helped out. So that was
couldn't
huge.
even imagine writing a whole magazine by yourself. Before I started doing this podcast, I was writing those blog entries, right?
Yeah.
Man,
It takes
that was
dedication.
enough, like just getting a few paragraphs out every week.
Oh, it is. But, I mean, keep in mind, you have a regular job and you have a family.
Yeah.
I had quit my job. I didn't really have a family or anything, so I could really focus on it. And 8 hours a day I really spent doing that stuff, but I also tried to capitalize on getting people in the community to write articles for me and send in photos and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I'm kind of a slacker, so I didn't really do all the articles.
I think there were even a couple pictures of me in there. So,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
It's like,
Wonderful pictures.
I wasn't doing anything crazy.
Yeah, but you were riding, man, or wearing my T-shirts or whatever it was. It was a very important thing that you did.
Filling some space.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably the biggest example of failing but learning things from it.
Cool.
And things going south when they shouldn't have.
That's really cool, because I've recently been introduced to this idea of you try 10 things, and like if the 10th thing works,
Yeah.
you're lucky. Like, you don't just go to school and you find like the one thing that you're going to do and then you retire in that.
Yeah.
I had an
Yeah.
experience like that coming out of high school.
Sure.
Right? I got an offer for this gig as an apprentice electrician doing commercial work.
Yep.
I was like, oh, great. I didn't know what I was going to do after high school, but now I know what I'm going to do for the next 40 years. Oh, great. I was like, security.
Oh, yeah.
And then 2 years into it, I'm like, I think we're going back to school.
Yeah. It's really weird trying to make giant decisions at that time of your life. It's virtually impossible.
I feel like it's cool the age we live in that allows for that, like, I'm going to call it the widening gyre of information and like self-identification, maybe, right?
Totally right. I believe it's the age of side hustles. I wish that when I was broke and couldn't get jobs that I had all these potential side hustles. Walking dogs, the WAG app or Ubering or whatever it might be. I wish all that existed.
Oh man, okay, this pertains right here. So there's these grocery shopping apps, right, that are like, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what it's called, but there's like Lyft and Uber and all that stuff.
Yeah.
There's something for grocery shopping.
Yeah.
Where you can like pick out your items, send a shopper to the store, and then they deliver your groceries, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So anyway, so I was talking to one of these personal digital shoppers, I guess I'll call them. But they were talking about how the app, right? Somebody had this great idea to like add a logarithm to start doing something.
Yeah.
With the way they pay their shoppers is calculated. But I guess the logarithm kept going. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Logarithm, algorithm.
It's all right, man.
I'm just talking here.
No, I get it.
But it just kept going, right?
yeah.
To the point where not only were the people not making money
Oh, crap.
off of the delivery, they were getting money taken away on every delivery.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, disaster.
So, somebody somewhere was like, I got this idea for this algorithm that's going to improve everything. And then shit hit the fan.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a giant mistake. Oh, God, when you're talking money, that's huge. Crap. Well, I think that there's another aspect of mistakes that is if you don't take the risk. So there's an idea that I've had recently, which is concierge for digital nomads. So there are people who now don't have to work in any office. They can be on the road all the time. They can be in their RVs, they can be in their cars, they can just be hanging out at the base of El Capitan at Yosemite. But they might be doing their jobs from there. And so a concierge, it might be an app where I as the concierge am your one-stop shop. If you need IT support, maybe your computer's crashed, or you need health insurance, I brought together a co-op for health insurance. Your car breaks down, I can send the guy to, so I am your one-stop shop to keep you on the road and to keep you working all the time. Well, I had this idea, maybe 3 years ago, and just like the story goes for everybody, now it's a giant thing, and I never capitalized on it. I never jumped on it, and the mistake is that I should have. Could I have pulled it off? Quite frankly, I think it depends on your personality. I don't think I would have been willing to sink a bunch of money into getting it done because of the experience that I had with the magazine. But what I'm seeing now is that there are probably 5 companies doing exactly the same thing, and they're starting to crush it. They're really starting to take off. So that should have been me.
Bummer.
Yeah. So if anybody out there wants to do it, anybody that's listening to the podcast wants to do it, take off with the idea. Get it done.
On that same note, you're sitting here in your workshop and this idea, you're like, this could be a really good thing for the future.
Yep.
I would imagine you're thinking of something. You're envisioning something that's going to go off without a hitch. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
If you started down that road.
Yeah.
I mean, so many moving pieces with an idea like that. I am sure you're
really
going to hit so many difficulties and hardships, miscommunications, misschedulings, right?
Big time.
Like technology difficulties and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I often think of somebody who's highly educated as somebody that's not going to make mistakes.
Oh, right.
I'm going to go to the doctor because he knows how to fix me.
Right.
And I had this realization recently where it's like, a doctor's like a mechanic, right? Like,
yeah, that's totally
you
true.
just kind of go into them and they're like, it sounds like...
Oh, yeah.
They probably know how to phrase it a little better. So they seem a little more confident when they're going to be like opening up your body. But no, I've just had this veil drop from my eyes where it's like, okay, well, the people that are highly educated, like, they make a lot of mistakes too, and that's still the only way anybody ever learns anything.
Well, it's true. And I think that in that particular example, a doctor might run a bunch of different tests on you, and it wants to get negative results in certain cases. I thought it was this, but it's not. So that helps me kind of zero in on things. So they might not know everything, but they know what tests to run to find out what it is.
Right. It's like they know the mechanism to get there.
Yeah. And so, I mean, would you consider a test that gave you a negative result on what they thought it was, is that a mistake? I don't know. I think it's kind of a little bit of both. It's a mistake and it's a success.
Right. It's more for their information and more for like the pool of medical information. So
yeah,
ultimately it's going towards the greater good. Or
oh yeah. But when it comes to ideas like this digital nomad concierge, if you're trying to come up with an idea that's kind of disruptive, very innovative, there is nobody, no matter what kind of education they have, there's nobody that knows what is involved in it. Somebody has to be the first one.
Right.
And so if you're going to be the first one, you have to write your plan or be aware that it may take longer than you'd like it to. And you're going to have to run some tests to see what works and what doesn't. The part of being educated there is realizing that it's not going to, and your education may just simply be that you've experienced this before, you've failed before, and you just know how to test things a little bit better.
Right.
But so, you go into it knowing that nobody's an expert in this thing, and you have to be the guinea pig. There's nothing wrong with that.
Have you met anybody that embodies that spirit of going into something knowing that it's going to take 5-10 times longer than what they project, and they're going to spend 10 times as much? Because I don't think that's very common.
No, it's true, and I think that there are certain people who are better set up for it. So I have a fraternity brother by the name of Eric Flanagan who has a vineyard out in Northern California in the Russian River Valley. Now, he came into this vineyard business probably with a fair amount of money because he was a hedge fund manager in New York for a while. But he realized that in buying this vineyard and planting the vines and everything, it's going to take a long time. Wine vines, grapevines, take 10 years to really set their roots down and to really produce good fruit that's going to turn into a good wine. And so he knew that he had to figure out what bottling was all about, what, fermenting and everything. He knew that there were a lot of resources out that could help him. I suspect that when he went in with his business plan, he had a slush fund, a mistake fund on his side that was probably 100% more than what he expected to spend. He just knew it's going to be tough. I got to be prepared for it and be super patient with it. I can't imagine not making any money, not being able to produce anything for 10 years.
Right.
But, jumping to the end of the story, he's doing really well now, which is great.
Hey, but that's cool if you go into it with like a huge fund for mistakes.
Yeah.
Like, I got $100 left over. Like,
yeah.
I still win.
Well, yeah, man. So, then maybe what you do is you try a smaller idea. You start with smaller things and that becomes the foundation of your idea. And then you continue to add as you make more money. You just try to start small. So, if you have one car and you can deliver groceries, well, then maybe eventually you'll have a fleet of cars and you have a bunch of driving for you, but start with the one car, right? And see where the mistakes are so that you can teach other people not to make the same mistakes.
I feel like there's a good lesson for us millennials in there.
I know that the lesson for me has always been to be a lot more patient. I wish that in my business plan for the magazine, I had expected that it was going to take at least 7 years. But looking back on it now, that may have been 4 more years of throwing money down the rat hole than I should have.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You got to know when to pull the plug, too. That's kind of an
And I
important
think
thing.
when we were talking before on the phone, you were just saying maybe the mountain boarding magazine wasn't even going to work in paper. Like maybe that was something that was more of a digital execution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which I guess you could switch over really easily from paper to digital, at least I would assume.
Yeah, as long as you haven't blown through all your money in the first 3 years. But you're exactly right. Sometimes these ideas are not about the ideas or the money that you have or anything else. It's about the timing. So I look back on it and say that my timing was a giant mistake. Mm-hmm. But again, I learned from it. So experiential learning all the way around.
So there's that old adage, to err is human, to something. What is it?
Yeah, let's see, to forgive is divine. I don't know what that is, But I know that the one that I really pay attention to is if you get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. Just keep getting up because you're gonna get through it. But it can be really frustrating. When you're old like I am, you can look back on it and say, oh, okay, everything worked out. One example that I want to give you also is that I went to Wake Forest for my undergrad. And I went to Wake Forest because it was kind of loose. It was a liberal arts education. And I didn't know what I wanted to be, so that sounds like a great idea. Well, I got out here and I couldn't get a job for 10 years, and I now look back on Wake Forest like, maybe I shouldn't have gone there. I should have gone somewhere else and studied something extraordinarily specific, engineering, for example. And that might have set me out on a better path. But had I taken that, I wouldn't be where I'm now with a wife that I absolutely adore in a state that I just love to death, traveling all the time. So you can't look back on it that way. You just got to, at every juncture, make a good decision, but be aware that it's going to take you someplace that you may not have expected.
So to err is human. To err again, also human.
Yeah, just keep doing it.
To have a great idea and then err really big.
Yeah.
Also human.
And I think
but to learn that you're on a journey is divine.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, that's exactly right. When that becomes a revelation, I'm on a journey. When I come up with a lot of ideas for a lot of different companies. They're goofy. They're almost always goofy, but I always want to share them with everybody in case somebody else wants to take the nugget of an idea and run with it. I'll let them make the mistakes, and maybe they'll give me credit for it later on and let me become an investor later on.
Cool. I think that about wraps it up. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, man, it's mistakes are an important part of life. I try to build opportunity in my training programs. I build a lot of opportunities for people to experiment on their own, make a lot of mistakes, because that really is the best way to learn. In a training situation, of course, it's not as grave if you make a giant mistake as it is in real life, but you get more comfortable with it that way.
I think it'd be cool if that was something that was baked more into our culture. It's
Yeah.
like the expectation of mistakes.
I'm in
There's a little more of that in our culture.
I'm in a situation where
Expecting efficiency
my
results.
boss talks about letting me make mistakes. He's like, yeah, experiment with that. But also gives me messages where, like, we don't have time for mistakes.
Right.
And I have a little bit of trouble kind of balancing those things
For
out.
sure.
I prefer to make the mistakes. Let's see what happens. But just try not to risk everything when I do it.
Wise words.
Yeah, man.
All right. Cool.
I really enjoyed that conversation. It's nice to throw more of a lighthearted one out there every now and then. And I really strive to become as comfortable with failure and just taking the next step on the journey like Brian is. And I really love his posture toward life and work. Now, I'm preaching to the choir when I say this, but I just want to bless all of you who are listening to this podcast today to fail and to fail big, and to take the next steps towards acting on a big idea that maybe you've only been thinking about, and to learn whatever lesson you need to learn as a result. And what is that for you in your life right now? What is the next big idea that you need to move on, or what is the next big step that you need to take? Well, that's all for this week, but before I close it out, I have a big favor to ask you. Could you hop on iTunes and review the show for me? That will really help it grow and thrive. And as always, make sure to connect with the Grounded Presence on Facebook and Instagram to get all the latest updates and a little extra content every week, especially on that Instagram. And I will see you right back here in 2 weeks.